and moved in with him the next day. The affair had lasted 3 months before she'd made what became the ultimate mistake. At dawn's first opalescent glow, after a long night of lovemaking, she had told him that she loved him, only to shatter into 1,000 tiny pieces when he'd merely brushed his lips to her temple and said he didn't do love. It had taken tremendous effort to calmly leave, to refuse his calls, accept a teaching position in another country, and attempt to forget his existence. Impossible. When his image had taunted her in vivid dream form through the long, lonely nights, and his name, together with photographic evidence, appeared in the media relating yet another business coup, or a picture of him with a stunning female at his side had been displayed on a social page. It had been her mother's fight against a progressive form of cancer 2 years later which had brought Romy home on 3 months' compassionate leave. An incredibly sad time, after which Andre had insisted she return to fulfill the remaining year of her teaching contract. At first she'd been reluctant to leave him, but his reassurance had been convincing, which, together with the promised support of a few close family friends, helped ease her mind. Her father's desperate bid to ensure his wife's every comfort had involved expensive treatments, the highest quality of care, and the fact he'd succeeded was laudable. Maxine Picard had gone to her grave unaware of the price her husband had paid, or the sequence of events which was to follow. Who could have predicted the stock market crash that sent Andre Picard to the wall? Worse, that a once honourable man would stoop to defraud, then compound the crime with a desperate gambling bid in an effort to regain financial security. Even Romy could have told her father it was a recipe for disaster had she known. Except it had only been when her teaching contract had ended and she'd returned to Melbourne to take up a new teaching position on home ground that she'd learnt the true state of her father's affairs. Everything sold, including the small apartment which had replaced the family home following Maxine's death, the car, furniture, and possessions. Chilling to learn Andre had been arrested, charged, and was awaiting trial, with a prison sentence a certainty, none of which he'd revealed in letters, emails, or intermittent telephone contact during her absence. Instead, he deliberately waited until a week after her return before confiding the grim facts. A week in which she'd leased a furnished apartment, purchased a car, and taken up her new teaching position. "How could you have been so careless?" were words she'd barely refrained from uttering, followed closely by, "What were you thinking?" Except the tired, careworn man facing her looked old beyond his years, physically, mentally, and emotionally beaten. Instead, she'd swung into action, verifying the fact, attempting to negotiate, but to no avail. Not surprising, given her father's total debt ran into millions, plural. A horrifying situation with no foreseeable way out. Except one. A personal appeal to Xavier DeVasquez as a last-ditch effort. Phone calls, messages left, each more urgent than the last. Messages Xavier DeVasquez's PA assured were relayed, except none elicited a return. Which left Romy 2 options, and giving up wasn't one of them. 3 years teaching English to children in underprivileged areas had fashioned her into the young woman she'd become. At 27, she was a long way from the trusting romantic who'd believed a man's charm to be genuine and spun a fantasy web that had no basis in reality. A man she was determined to confront today, one way or another, even if it meant resorting to unconventional methods. Yet what other option did she have? None whatsoever. "So, suck it up," she admonished silently, as she checked the directory board.